Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm really glad you're here. If you're new here, my name is Becca, and this channel is all about my love for spinning, knitting, weaving, crocheting, sewing, all the fiber things. If you're enjoying this fiber adventure, please consider leaving a like and a comment, or subscribing to my channel, or sharing this with your friends. I invite you to grab whatever project you have on the go and join me. Let's make some stuff. Our laid-back, stress-free summertime make-along has started. There are no rules. You can use any materials that you like, use any craft that you like. The only stipulation would be that you're making something that you would like to wear or you would like to make during the summertime when it is warm. The make-along has started, as I said, and goes through the end of July. We are sharing projects on Instagram and Ravelry using the hashtag SummerMakeAlong, and we also have a Ravelry group, Summertime Make-Along. I hope that you will consider joining us. You can make one thing or as many things as you like, but please share the projects that you're making so that we can all enjoy a bit of summertime fun. I have several works in progress to share with you this week. The first one is my black sparkly handbag that's in process. This is a pattern. It was a free pattern that I picked up from Hobby Lobby on one of those little tear-off sheets. But it's a rectangular bag with a self strap and then a button closure. And the pattern called for Omega Espiga thread, which is a nylon thread, so fairly sturdy and robust, and I thought it would work well in some yarn that I had in my stash, which is Bernat Satin Sparkle in the color Twilight. So this is black acrylic yarn with some metallic sparkle in it. It's fairly subtle, but I think it's really nice. But this yarn doesn't have a lot of sturdiness to it because it is acrylic and not nylon, so I am going to have to line this bag with some fabric. But I'll do that after I finish all the crocheting. As you can see, I have finished almost the entire bag section. I'm about ready to start on the straps. But the construction of this bag is a rectangular base that you knit first, and then it's knit in the round, or excuse me, I've got knitting on the brain. This is crochet, as you can see, crochet. Anyway, this is, the bottom is a crocheted rectangle, and then you start crocheting around, making up the rows to make the bag. So it's going very well. Again, the bag part is nearly done, so I'd say the crocheting is probably 75% done, and then just putting in the lining, which I'll figure out how to do after I get the bag all made up so that I know what the dimensions are going to be. I would, though, like to talk a little bit about the process of making this bag. It's going fairly quick, but every person who writes a pattern writes it slightly differently, and sometimes there are instructions in the pattern that can be interpreted in multiple ways. And that's happened to me with this pattern. So, as I said, you start out with the base, which is a rectangle. So at the end of the row, you do one single crochet and turn so that your rows are equally spaced, equal heights. And then the first round of half double crochet, which is what the rest of the bag is, the instructions said to go around one round and do a slip stitch and then 2 chains to raise the height for the next round. And so then the instructions say to continue in half double crochet for the rest of the bag. So I interpreted that to be 2 chains to represent the first half double crochet of the round, and then slip stitch at the end so that you're raising the height and then going around equally. And I actually did nearly a whole ball of yarn and frogged it twice because I just really didn't like the look of that start of the row. I felt like it was really obvious and really obviously different than the rest of the bag, and obviously different from the picture on the pattern. And so I went ahead and pulled all of that out. Again, twice I did this. The first time I thought, well, maybe I'm just going into the wrong stitch and it's just traveling weird. But when it turned out that way the second time, I pulled it out again and had a rethink about the instructions and decided that what they probably meant was just to continue in half double crochets around in more of a spiral pattern rather than raising by rows. And that is looking much, much better. And I really like the look of that. So this gets into a bit of a philosophical territory here of when you make a mistake, or when I make a mistake, do I leave it be or do I go back and fix it? And this is really a struggle, especially if you didn't notice the mistake and continued on for several rows or several hours, and you've completed a lot more of the project. Do you go back and fix that mistake? You know, these are often things that nobody else is going to notice. They're really tiny. You know, you'd have to point them out to someone if they were just looking at the thing that you made. But I find that I notice those mistakes. I'm bothered by those mistakes every time I look at it, forever. And to me, it's worth, even if I've invested hours and hours, it's worth pulling everything back, starting over. You know, sometimes you just have to start over to get a good result that I'm happy with. And maybe that, I'm sure that's not just me that feels that way, but I'm sure that there are plenty of people who feel the opposite way, that, you know, you make a mistake, you just move on, nobody's going to notice it, doesn't bother you. So how does that work for you? Are you someone who embraces your mistakes and just leaves them in, or do you go back and fix them? Tell me in the comments which side you fall. And maybe it depends on the size of the mistake, or the project that you're working on, or what you're going to use it for. I have a sweater that was a cabled sweater that I was working on. I'd made up the entire sweater, and then I noticed that one of the cable twists on the back was the wrong direction. And at that point, I thought, I'm leaving this in. And it really doesn't bother me, mostly because it's on the back, but also because it's very subtle and nobody's ever going to notice. And as you might notice, I have very long hair, so it often covers it up anyway. But in this case with the bag, you know, I didn't want to have a very obvious seam line, which is what the first way that I was going about this was giving me a very obvious start of round that was different than the rest of the fabric. So it hasn't really taken me that long to go back twice and correct that mistake. So I've still made good progress on it, and we'll finish it. And now hopefully I'll like it a lot better in the end. If I hadn't gone back, I probably would be finished with the crocheting, but that's fine. You know, these projects, they take as long as they take. So that's my first work in progress I wanted to share with you. You'll see me in my natural crafting environment, covered by about 40 pounds of feline. They usually lay nicely next to me, sometimes on top of me, usually on top of me. But sometimes they do get a little interested in yarn or needles or cable needles, circular needle cables, and that makes it a bit difficult to continue crafting. But this is how I usually craft, surrounded by cats. I know that there are some of you who always have a bunch of projects on the go at the same time, and I'm usually not that way. I usually do one, maybe two projects at a time, much more of a monogamous knitter. But I guess I was inspired by the MakeALong because I now have 3 works in progress to share with you. The first one you just saw in the black sparkly handbag. The second work in progress I shared in my last video. This is my Rustic cabin socks. They've gotten quite a bit longer than you saw them last week. I'm knitting these 2 at a time from 2 separate balls on one 40-inch circular needle using the magic loop method. And this is self-striping yarn from Knit Picks in Felici, and the color of this is Rustic Cabin. I'm doing these as just a vanilla sock pattern with an afterthought heel, so the heel will go in around this point, but because I only have the 2 balls of yarn, I'm going to go ahead and knit them all the way up the leg and with the cuff, and then break the yarn off and go back and put the heels in. And that way I can maintain the stripe pattern, which is really nice. So I've got probably about 4 inches to go on the leg and the cuff before these are done. But this project, because it's just plain stockinette and the yarn is doing all of the work to make them beautiful, this is a great project for chatting, or when you're chatting with other people, or when I'm chatting with other people, or when I'm watching TV and maybe want to watch something that has subtitles. I can just knit round and round and not really have to think about it too much. So a great project to just have for when I want that repetitive motion, but I don't want to have to concentrate on what I'm doing too much. I really like the color stripes that are popping up in this, with the dark brown against the light blue is really pretty, and then this sort of gradient from cream to yellow to kind of a burnt orange and a maroon, then back to the dark brown. So these are a lot of fun. Since I'm working on multiple projects, I don't really know how long they'll take me to get finished. If this were my only project, it would only take me a couple days probably to finish them up, but yeah, I'm kind of new to this multiple works in progress, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. I'm not sure if I'm going to like it. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. So, Rustic Cabin Socks, work in progress number 2. The last work in progress that I have to share is a new cast on this week. This is another free pattern. I think I picked this one up at Michael's. This is a Coates and Clark pattern for the All Day Beret, which calls for Stitch Nation by Debbie Stoller Bamboo U yarn, which is a bamboo blend yarn, and I thought that this would go really well in the Barocco Modern Cotton that I have in several colors in my stash that I used for the Wildflowers and Crop Circles scarves. So I've started the first one cast on, or I've started this pattern cast on in the lavender color, and it starts at the brim with just a 2x2 rib, and then there is a sort of a slanted lace or eyelet pattern that switches between right and left slanting that goes around the top of the hat. So just like the black handbag, I did start this one over a few times with the cast on, in part because of the needles that I had. So the pattern itself calls for a 16-inch circular needle in size 5, which I have. And what I have is Boys Baleen 16-inch size 5 needles, US size 5. These are synthetic baleen, so they're a little bit more flexible. This is the only pair of needles that I have in this brand, and they're just really not my favorite. The needles are really short, and I think I tend to hold on to longer needles and prefer that. And also the cable, as you can see, has a lot of memory to it, and so it doesn't lay nicely. It twists around, and it was really awkward. So this was my first cast on. It's about 100 stitches, a few more. And so that was my first attempt, and that was a failure. I pulled it out, started again, and this time I thought I'll use my favorite cables, or my favorite circular needles, which are ChiaoGoo's 40-inch knit red. I love these. I use them for socks all the time on the long cable, and you can see they have much longer needle tips. They're just way more comfortable, and the cables are out of the way. And when you're doing the magic loop, you end up with basically two-sided knitting. So you do one side and then you turn and you do the other side. That was my second cast on attempt, and I don't know what it was about this particular yarn, but it really didn't want to work for me in that application. So after a couple of rounds of that, I decided that's just not going to work, and pulled it out again, and then went to double pointed needles. I started with 4 double pointed needles because I thought 100 stitches is going to be nicely evenly split on the 4 needles, and I very quickly found out that that was just really awkward because the needles that I wasn't knitting on were getting in the way from the needle that I needed to work on. So I redistributed that between 3 needles, and it's working out much, much better. So hopefully this will be the last cast on for this hat. But you know, again, sometimes you just need to start over. So I have this yarn, as you might have seen, in multiple colors for the scarves that I had made. And so if this hat turns out to be really cute, I might make it in more colors. 3 projects apparently are not enough. I also have several other hopeful soon-to-be works in progress. As I was going through my patterns and deciding which projects I wanted to do, there were several that caught my eye. And I've had all of these patterns for many, many years, and just have never gotten around to making them. So this was a great opportunity to do that. The first pattern that I'd like to make, I have a couple of different options. These, again, printed out from, 2005, 2006. So again, I've had these and been carrying them around for a long time. They're for satchel style bags, sort of a messenger style bag. This one is from Lion brand, the cabled one. I think it's really pretty, but I don't find it to be very practical. I feel like you wouldn't be able to carry anything very heavy in it. It would just stretch it out. So I think I'm going to go with this one, which is a felted fabric. This is a pattern called Satchel. Very nice name. From Stephanie Sheeman. From the 2005 summer edition of Knitty, which is an online knitting magazine. And you make it up and then you felt it, and it makes it much more sturdy than just a regular knitted bag would be. So I'm really excited to work on this. I'm going to have to see if I have enough yarn in my stash to make this, or if I'm going to have to buy some. But that'll be my a messenger style satchel bag that I hope to make. If I don't make it this summertime MakeALong, maybe it'll stay at the top of my pile of future projects, and I'll get to it soon. I also have a couple more pairs of socks that I'd like to get started with. One is the Iris socks. This is from the same dyer that made the trench coat socks, if you saw those in a previous video. It's self-striping yarn from Turtle Pearl Yarns on Etsy, but they're not, the self-striping is not evenly spaced, so it has this very interesting color block with unequal sizes of stripes. And this is I'm going to make these the same as I did the trench coat socks, with a vanilla sock pattern with afterthought heel and contrasting toes and heels and cuffs. So the Iris socks are going to be hopefully one of the next ones on my list. And then the second pair is another one of these tear-off patterns that I got for free, I think probably from Hobby Lobby many, many years ago. This is Patton's Stretch Pedicure Socks. And I don't have this yarn. I don't think you need, I think sock yarn is pretty interchangeable. So I'm going to make this, I think, in this beautiful hand-dyed yarn from CJ Coho Designs in the color Myrtle. This is 75% superwash Corriedale, 25% nylon. This is yarn that I purchased a few years ago at Plyaway in Kansas City from CJ at that event. So it's been in my stash for a while. I've been looking for something to make with it, and I think these pedicure socks are going to be great for that. So pedicure socks are basically just socks without toes, so that you can get your toenails painted and still wander around with socks on. Your feet don't get cold. So pedicure socks with this, I think they'll be really pretty. The last potential work in progress is another pattern that I printed out probably in 2006. Yep, printed out in 2006. This is a free pattern from Black Dog Designs for a beaded camisole, and it's a top with little spaghetti straps and then beaded little lace patterns with beaded dangles at the bottom. And I have wanted to make this pattern since, obviously, I printed it out in 2006, but I never got around to making it. I'm going to have to see if I have any yarn in my stash that would work for this, or if I'm going to have to go yarn shopping, which would just be a terrible thing. But I am super excited about this project and really want to get this on the needles. That's it for this video. I really hope you'll join our summertime make-along. All the details are going to be in the description box below, but feel free to tag me on Instagram or on Ravelry, or join our Ravelry group if you'd like to participate. Thank you for spending some of your creative time with me. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!